Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual conference, Pursuit 2021, Combating Financial Frauds with Technology, supported by Invest India and Startup India. Before we begin, I would like to quickly thank our partners, our session partner, Refinitiv, our gold partners, Reactor, Netherlands Embassy, and Cybersprint, our bronze partner, Onfido, and our knowledge partner, EY. With that, let us now begin with our next session. This session is a panel discussion on the pros and cons of allowing in-app notifications for payments transactions. And for the same, I would like to welcome our esteemed panelists. Our moderator, Mr. Kartik Shinde, Partner Technology Consulting EY, Mr. Rohit Shrivastava, Head Legal Risk and Compliance Balancehero, Mr. Ujwal Tamminedi, CTO Zokudo, and Mr. Praveen Dhabai, Chief Operating Officer Payworld. We welcome all of you, and I would now request Mr. Kartik to please take over. Kartik, I will just connect with the team for that.
Sure. Thanks, Karima. Good morning and welcome everyone to this session around, and the topic for today is the pros and cons of in-app notifications. And while the topic might seem a bit narrow, I think it has wider implications on the industry, especially given that RBI, who have released the digital payment security circular in February, have now mandated all the banks and financial institutions to follow certain controls and standards as they have put in this circular master direction. And one of the points appearing and in discussion with all the participants is these in-app notifications. So what I would like to do, first of all, welcome to all the panelists in the session. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here and speaking to you folks. Although we could have done it in the real world in person, but embracing the post-COVID circumstances, we are meeting in the virtual world. But very happy to be here. And I would request each one of us to put our viewpoints in, so that whatever discussions we have today in this session will help the larger industry folks to get some perspectives on the said topic. So with that, I would like to kind of put a first perspective in terms of what are your views on the topic around in-app notifications. Maybe we could spend the first 2-3 minutes just discussing your perspective and your take on the in-app notification, and then maybe we can delve deeper into what are the challenges, what are the pros, security concerns, etc. around that. So Praveen, should I start with you, taking the liberty to...
Yeah, sure. I think if you talk in terms of from the service provider's point or the operators of the payment system point of view, in-app notification will no doubt is much cheaper than SMS for sending any financial transaction. So from that perspective, it's a good move, and now it is becoming. RBI is also allowing it to use in-app notification as an OTP or doing the financial transaction for any through bank or any PPIs. Like we have a PPI holder, so we can from that perspective I can say. So one is that it will save money in terms of SMS, which is a good saving. But there are other concerns also, because SMS till now people are used to getting OTP on SMS, and it's a secure way. It gets delivered only on the on any phone, like even if it is a feature phone or a small phone. And on top of it, from Payworld point of view, like I represent Payworld. So Payworld point of view, we do mostly assisted transactions. When I say assisted transactions, means people who need to do any financial transactions like sending money or buying insurance or withdrawing money, etc. He has to go to a retail point, and then that person does the transaction. So in-app notification might not be very useful in those situations, because the end user is not carrying a smartphone or he doesn't know how to use a transaction. That's why he needs assistance. So with that perspective, I think it's a good initiative, but I think a lot needs to be seen that there is no security risk, and if it is on the mobile, and how it will be done if someone is using a computer to do a transaction. So I think that needs to be seen, because its penetration on mobile is also not yet 100% for financial transactions.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's yeah.
No, I think thanks, Praveen. I think that's a good start to that point, and great perspectives around how it's actually proving to be beneficial and a cost optimization agenda in terms of relying on SMS as an external factor. But great. I'll move on to Ujwal. More coming from the tech side, Ujwal. Maybe your thoughts, point of view. Ujwal, you're on mute.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, so I was just saying, so from technical point of view, right, if you want to compare SMS and in-app, considering we are saying in-app to encompass in-app notifications and messaging and push notifications as a bracket, right, the obvious con is the feature phones, etc. You need a smartphone for a push notification or an in-app notification. But the SMS, the problem is, one is obviously the security, right? It is an unencrypted protocol, sessionless protocol, no endpoint authentication, no encryption. Whereas in-app notifications and push notifications are much more secure using APIs or various protocols, right? So that's the difference between that. So you cannot, what we can do in the current scenario because of these pros and cons, probably the in-app notifications can supplement SMSs for transaction alerts, etc. Right? And there are further use cases that you can use with in-app notifications. So suppose you have logged in from, somebody is logged in from another device, right? Using your mobile credentials. You can use in-app notifications, etc. Specifically push notifications to tell the user that somebody has logged in successfully on some other device, and etc. Right? So not just for alerts, but the in-app and the push notifications can help in terms of security and user interaction and keeping engagement and other things like that. So my view, I think RBI also, I think the view would be to supplement the SMSs with in-app notifications rather than replacing them completely.
Right, right. And I'll come to that point, Ujwal, where you mentioned. Sorry, I think we had an interruption. So I'll come back to that, Ujwal, around security and maybe how we can, and get your thoughts more on how we can use these in-app notifications to make the application more secure. But I'll just pass it on to Rohit for his initial views and perspectives. Rohit.
Sure. So first of all, thanks for inviting me to this panel discussion. Before I, speak or present my view, let me give you my brief introduction and what we are doing right now. So I'm Rohit, and I take care of legal risk and finance of Balancehero Group. In Balancehero Group, there are two companies. One is a wallet company, and other one is a digital NBFC. So I'm taking care of both the entities, and and if you have observed, both are basically the entities working on digital mode. So one thing is very clear: the more digital you are, the more are the chances of fraud. So so that's a universal truth. And more technical we go, the more are the chances of fraud. Now, our target group is basically the people who are in tier 2, tier 3 cities. So now coming back to this in-app notification, I agree with Praveen and Ujwal that there are security concerns, and at the same time, the most important beneficial factor is that in-app notification is a cost saving. It has lots of incentives in terms of cost. But at the same time, one thing I would like to highlight here is that availability of internet. So in tier 2, tier 3 cities, there are many times internet availability is not very robust. So the enough notification does not work in the way we want or the regulator wants. So we this is you can say one of the negative side of in-app notifications.
Right.
Second thing is that uh, in-app notification, uh, again, I would touch upon the topic what Ujwal said, that there are lots of security concerns, and so in-app notifications are related to the device. So, for example, if a fraudster has grabbed the mobile phone somehow, the access of mobile phone, although without SIM card, then the in-app notification keep on being received by the person, by the fraudster. So
Right.
one of the major we can do is that the in-app notification should not be only linked with the device, but also with the SIM card which is inserted or which is registered for this transaction. So yeah, so there
Got
are
it.
other as well, but here are my 2 cents on this.
Sure, sure. Rohit, and would be great to probably, later in the discussion to have your views around some of the legal implications which users might have or which banks might have,
Right.
around usage of some of these features. And while we highlight the pros and cons, I think uh, you being here and getting a legal perspective would be even better for us to get more insights on that front.
Sure.
So I'm glad that we all are here with different varied backgrounds and skills in that sense. But yeah, I'll jump back to Ujwal and Ujwal. I think Rohit made a great point around, if there is a feature phone, and I think you also mentioned it. What about in-app notifications then? Whether when there is no internet availability. So what is generally a fallback mechanism? I mean, you engineer some of these things, you architect some of these things. So is the fallback usually only SMS, or if and depends really on when you are using the in-app notifications, but whether it is to do with reading an OTP or alerting an end user that the transaction has successfully happened. What are some of the fallback mechanisms? If
So see, the
Yeah.
thing is, see, all the communication protocols, right? They use the data network, right?
Right.
Only SMS is the only one that actually uses the voice network, and hence, if you want to fall back to having smart notifications, in-app notifications, it is the other way around, right? So SMS could be a fallback going forward, right? Where the majority of the communication is actually done with in-app and other notifications. There are some protocols like USSD, which are used for feature phones. Right? They are basically session based, where a customer like puts in a number *901, right? And then it goes to the server, it returns 4 options on the feature phone itself, like check balance, do a transaction, etc. So those
Yeah.
things are there. But the thing is, like, the only communication mechanism that uses the voice network itself is SMS, right? All others rely on basically the notifications in app, whatever. You obviously need a smartphone and you need internet for that, or
Right.
basically a data network for that. There's no option beyond that, right? So that's why, I mean, so hence they have to coexist, the SMSs and it. So the mobile, the new users, the smartphone users, they can be made more secure based on using these in-app notifications, etc., alerts, etc., right? Which can be more
Right.
contextual and based on analytics in the backend, and you can have a fraud system in the backend, etc., right? Whereas in case of SMS, it will be purely based on uh, alerts and the transaction alerts, or any other kind of things that the bank or the fintech company wants to sell.
Right. Right. And I always used to wonder, when even when an OTP say comes in while transacting uh, on a third party, merchant site or an application, when an OTP comes and the in-app actually reads your SMS based OTP and kind of inputs it for you. I mean, it's a feature for the end users not to.
Right. So that's more of a SMS read functionality, right?
Right.
So it's just that it can automatically pass the message, take out the code, and put it in the application, right?
Right.
So it's nothing to do with the normal SMSs and notifications are there.
Yeah. But it's definitely an in-app feature, not per se a notification, but an in-app feature which can be used to, provide a kind of a way for an end user to not switch back and more so from a convenience perspective, right? But there have been concerns raised in the past that is the application having access to my SMSs, unrestricted access, and can it read? So if an attacker was to compromise that particular mobile application, would it be able to read other OTPs, right? And probably do a malicious transaction in the backend, right? Something of that sort. So what would be the views here? I mean, are the mobile application technology teams really building these features, keeping security and some of those use cases in mind? Or how does it happen? Because I've seen providers switching these features. Yeah, Praveen.
Yeah, see, in-app notification is being used not for non-financial transactions by the apps like Uber and Urban Clap very well, or maybe lot many may be there where they use that the finishing the ride you have to give, or starting a ride you have to give that 4-digit number, which comes only in this thing. They don't send an SMS. So it works very well because the user is 100% on app. Whereas for financial transaction, the user is not 100% on app. Like all 100% users are not on app. So that is, I think, is the challenge where how you will differentiate. I think Ujwal will know exactly how you will differentiate that this user is not on app, so he will be sent an SMS, and he will be sent an OTP on SMS, and he will be sent an on alert on in-app sort of thing. So I think that is a challenge which needs to be addressed, that how it can be done. Otherwise, you have to send it at both the places. That doesn't serve the purpose at all. Yeah.
So here's the thing, like in-app and like I said, push notifications, basically you need to have the app, right? If you don't have the app, you'll have to mostly rely on SMS for transaction alerts or OTP. OTP mostly still SMS because that's how the 3D secured right now is. OTP is mostly SMS. And basically, if you want to differentiate whether I want to send him an SMS or an in-app notification, etc., the only thing that can differentiate is the fact that a customer has a mobile application or not with a smartphone.
Right. So the other thing, I think why they one way to use or what's rather mentioned in the RBI circular also is to notify users about the failed authentication attempts. And while some of the apps do it using in-app notifications, what's the panelists' view on this particular point? That should it be restricted to only in-app notifications, or should it also include a combination of in-app notifications and SMSs? Maybe Rohit.
I think not from technology point of view, but from a generic point of view, I can offer my comment here. I think Ujwal made a point again. So sending in on both the platform does not serve the purpose. So basically, that the objective here is to make it robust as well as cost saving. If you are again sending it, not only it increases the cost, but also more prone to the fraud. So, but yes, other way also true is that, for example, if it is being received on SMS, the person uh, who is actually not having access of the app at that point of time, the actual user, probably he will get alerted that, okay, there is something which is coming, which I have not initiated, the transaction I have not initiated. But again, this process of sending on both the platforms will outweigh the benefits associated with it. So I think we should find a solution where we should move more futuristic, more progressive, rather than being more conservative and sending it to both the platforms.
Right. Ujwal? Because
Yeah.
today Google and Facebooks of the world, if you have if you basically have exhausted your retries on login, for example, they do send you an SMS/email, or SMS and email as well, just to tell you that there has been a login. Forget failed attempts, even a login attempt is flagged off.
Mhm.
So basically, from what Rohit said, any cues from that point which you
So
want to
this,
kind of?
sure. So this can be like specifically in-app notifications, put notifications. They can work very well to provide security and alerts to and prevent fraud to if uh, on the digital mobile applications, right? Compared to a normal SMS, right? Mostly because you can have applications like Clever Tap and these Firebase in the backend, which can
Yeah.
detect patterns based on analytics, right? And can alert the end app user when a specific trigger is there, right? So these
Hmm.
cases where, and there will be with this mobile application, there's a lot of data that comes in, right? And with the AI/ML, you can basically have a models where you can alert the user in case you see a transaction that is suspicious or fraudulent, or you see something that is not in the normal scheme of things that the machine has learned. So basically, that can be used to, that is a big use case for push notification specifically, right? One simple example is, suppose somebody has taken my SIM card, right? And or clone my SIM card onto his phone, right? And then he downloads the same app, right? Zokudo app is downloaded, and he tries to basically authenticate using my mobile number or something, right? So
Right.
what we can have the mechanism for push notifications where it actually sends push notification to all the devices, right, which are registered on the mobile app against the mobile number, and the user will receive immediately saying you did a login which was unsuccessful,
Right.
and this guy knows, the original user knows he has not tried anything right now. So that's an alert, and that immediately he can call the support and say, I've tried this, or then we can go back to the logs and see why this failed authentication happened. Is it actual fraudulent activity or is it a mistake? So yeah,
Right.
so basically in push notifications specifically, not in-app, I would say push notifications, which are used for alerts and uh, telling the user of some activity that has happened, right? Those are very useful for preventing fraud, specifically by informing the customer at the right time.
Right. Right.
Uh, So I would like to add here. In-app notification or push notification for financial transactions might be one part, but I would strongly agree that this kind of notifications for customer awareness or fraud prevention will be very helpful. So even for marketing purposes, this comes very handy. When you cannot send certain things to the customer by other ways, but in-app notifications comes very handy. So yeah, so from fraud prevention perspective and customer awareness perspective, that's a great thing.
Right. No, absolutely. I think from a cost efficiency perspective, it's a great boon any which ways, Rohit. But Rohit, just from a legal perspective, um, have you come across any cases, and I'm just building out a hypothetical case here, that a user or an end customer has actually taken or filed a case for against a mobile app to where he or she has lost money or and has been a victim of fraudulent transaction. And while in-app notifications were there, this still has happened, and the user hasn't got notified, right? uh, so in those scenarios, what would be your view, more from a legal perspective, just so that banks and other financial institutions and digital fintechs, etc., can be wary of?
Right, right. So let me offer my view here. Apart from handling, one of the functions I'm handling is also fraud prevention or fraud reporting. So the example you said, we receive similar kind of cases, very frequently, where the customer claims that he has not done the transaction, but the amount got debited, or many times, after taking the loan, user is claiming that he has never applied for this loan, and so somebody is trying to misuse his kind of KYC documents and all. And many times we also got to know that a person stopped using his mobile number, months ago, and it was assigned to some other person, and some other person tried to log into his existing account. So first of all, there are, in our process, there are many ways we try to prevent that there is no kind of illegal access or unauthorized access in the app. So there are various ways of doing that. So for example, we identify the device ID, we also identify the SMS, and then artificial intelligence tries to identify that this SMS is not with the device ID which was logged in earlier. So we kind of send the alert. So it's very rare, difficult. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is that two things, two regulatory initiative uh, which has been brought in by RBI and other regulator like TRAI. So first is that if there is any kind of financial, fraud or something, uh, it's very difficult to identify that whether it's a fraud transaction or not. In fact,
Hmm.
in my personal view, in fact, the data says that there is hardly 3% success rate of this kind of financial fraud. So although you go and report it to the police station, but finally, catching a culprit is very difficult. So two things. One is that limited liability of customer. There is a RBI circular where it says that if customer thinks that he has done some kind of unauthorized transaction, he should immediately notify to the his bank or NBFC from where the transaction has been done. And there are categorization that if he does it within 3 days, or then how much liability he will incur. So this is a great way of stopping or basically minimizing the loss to the customer. Second thing, and this has been in a great focus from RBI, this limited liability of customer. They have pushed all the banks and NBFCs to, make this tool aware to their users. Second thing is that one initiative recently, I think 6, 7 months back, which was started by TRAI and even RBI pushed it, is MNRL, so mobile number revocation list, wherein they used to publish the list of the mobile numbers which has been revoked and no longer in use, and advise the banks and financial institutions to identify those numbers and and stop the transactions, or basically with that number, or some kind of process where is by which the other person who is getting this mobile number will not be able to use. So having said that, identifying whether it's actually a fraud, and if it is a fraud, then you know the success rate. I would say that better prevention is better than cure, and if it is not prevented, at least report it. Earlier you report, earlier it is better. The better it is.
Absolutely. No, valid points, Rohit. Thanks very much. Just one last point. I think then we'll open up the session for Q&A. But sorry, Ujwal, I keep coming back to you from a more of a tech perspective. But some of these implementations, that are happening, whether push notifications or in-app, how secure are the implementations? I mean, if let's say, and I'll paint a scenario again, I'm at a hotel or an airport Wi-Fi, and I get any kind of in-app notification, whether it is to do with a transaction I've done or an OTP. Usually are these encrypted? Are these going through over a secure channel? And how
Yes.
can...
Yeah, absolutely. See, most of these, specifically say Firebase that we use for in-app notifications, right? They're basically SSL enabled, and they can be basically like HTTPS, basically, right? So they are secure in comparison to SMS. Obviously, they're much more secure, but that does not mean that you cannot do phishing, etc. Right? So that's why most of the companies say on public internet, try not to do something a financial transaction. So on a known network, you should do. See, no matter how many security things you put, right?
Put in.
There's always a way to hack. So as he said, prevention better than cure. So when you're on an outside network at airport, don't do a financial transaction. So
True.
that's
True.
And also, I
True. I
mean,
think...
from the RBI perspective, also, I mean, they've given clear guidelines in terms of what is there for information security requirements, right? You have to follow those for you to be compliant, right? From encrypting the passwords. Once the OTP is given, delete the OTP in 15 minutes, right? You can have a specific password policy which requires specific special characters, uppercase, lowercase, number, right?
Yeah.
And then if you have more than 3 login attempts, you block the account. So all these are IS guidelines that are well known in the industry, and they have to be implemented for you to get the cyber audit, which is required for RBI.
Yeah. Yeah. No, interestingly, the Digital Payment Security Circular also mentions that the banks have to make sure that their apps, if it is connecting from an untrusted network connection, it is up to the banks to make sure that the transaction is safe and secure. So irrespective whether the customer is coming from a home network, office network, or a public Wi-Fi, it's on the bank and the app, digital app, to ensure the security of the end customer, which is again going to be a challenge going forward to see how we build in security features, etc. But I absolutely hear your point, Praveen. Your views on this?
Yeah, I think I agree what you are saying. So I think that it has to be seen that how exactly it needs to be implemented. I think that's because there will be challenges in my view, and and those needs to be addressed.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. So just I would also like to add.
Yeah, Rohit.
So I have seen in the recent past that RBI, or for that matter any regulator, there is too much expectation from the banks and financial institutions. Even without understanding that how it will be implemented. So for example, you gave the liability is on the banks and financial institutions to identify if it is a public network or private network. In recent past
Yeah.
also, there were some circulars. In fact, we discussed with IAMI also that like interoperability of PPIs, which while they have issued the circular, but there is absolutely not clarity how it will be implemented, and they have left us to be they have given the deadline, but there is absolutely no clarity neither by RBI nor by NPCI. So I think, that's kind of a problem. They should also think that, but from a regulator perspective, this is a little bit, it's their duty to make aware and all, but there are practical challenges.
And
No, absolutely.
I think for in-app notification and SMS, one way it can be done is just a thought is that you can all transactional thing can be sent on SMS and other alerts and other things can be sent on in-app. So I think that also will take care of the from the fraud point of view or people using feature phone. So when you have to do a transaction, you have to enter the OTP will be sent the transactional only on SMS, not on in-app. And in-app, the other things can be sent like alerts and
Right,
balances and all that.
right. No, absolutely, Praveen, and thanks for circling back onto the in-app notifications point. But I think you, I think great points that have come out. One, obviously, we started with looking at the in-app notifications as a way to increase cost efficiencies, where we can do away with SMSs and traditional channels of notifications, which was a great point. Second, then we discuss about the pros and cons, where there are numerous security loopholes and areas where things can definitely improve upon from an in-app notifications perspective. And I think Ujwal uh, threw a lot of insights on how it can be implemented and what are the pros and cons of that. To now, where we discussed about what could be some of the areas, and Praveen, like you highlighted, which ones is it going to be a combination, or is it going to be only in-app notification? And I think the call one has to take when building out the mobile and what its feature is going to be, what utility of that in-app notification is going to be, and accordingly take a call as to whether induce a dual functionality of in-app notification versus plus SMS, or include only an in-app notification. And then Ujwal also talked about how securely you can implement this over channels. Rohit, I think thanks for touching upon some of the legal aspects and highlighting that case in point example, which was very useful. So overall, I think and while I'll send out a summary to this group and the audience in general, but I think I feel we kind of achieved the objective of
Thank
discussing
you.
a topic which was very narrow, and initially as well, in terms of what could be some of the insights that can come out of this. But I think thank you very much for kind of providing your valuable insights and your time on this topic. And I think we have a number of takeaways to end the session.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you, Kartik. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Praveen. Thanks, Rohit. Thanks, Ujwal. Should we just hang on for Q&As?
Yes, yes. If you can just give us a second. There are
Yeah.
a few questions.
Garima, are these questions going to be on the chat?
Yes, yes, just one second. I'll just post it here on the chat.
Sure, sure. Okay. I think Rajiv has asked a question. Wanted to dwell a bit deeper on the SMS readers and its security implications, which are now being blocked by Android and iOS, so that they are not allowing it for all apps. I think we kind of briefly discussed this,
Yes.
Ujwal.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to throw some more light.
You see, this SMS reading, right? It is earlier it was pretty much every app that can read the SMS. Right? Then we had these changes where only specific apps whitelisted by, say, Google or Android, right? Only those can read the specific of the SMSs, right? A lot of
Right.
companies also rely on the data from the SMSs, specifically transactional data from banks and fintechs and others, to basically give you an overview of your spending or what is your savings, etc. So a lot of fintechs also depend on that, but it has to be explicit. It is not like every app can just go and read the SMS data. But it is still going on, and there are use cases specifically in fintech also, where you read the SMSs, see the transactions done by the customer, and have an overview of that and integrate into your personal finance app, etc.
Yep. No, thanks, Ujwal. I think the other is not a question, but I think a comment which says that need to add financial education and IT security in our education system to make our generation more aware about all of this. Yeah, I think that's an absolute spot on point. I think we definitely need to add, and I think these
And
things
all
will keep
banks and
evolving.
RBI also is doing a lot of activities in educating people on this. So all
Yeah,
entities, regulated entities on their own, they are doing it.
right,
And
right.
the general public is being informed like how to prevent frauds and never to the TV commercials. Everything is there. But I think education system is a good idea. It should from the kids only it can be going.
Yeah, yeah.
In
Well,
fact, I was attending one meeting with RBI very recently, their Consumer Education and Protection Committee. One of the action items they prescribed for, for reducing the kind of customer complaints to RBI is that most of the complaints are reaching to RBI after customer thinks that there has some fraud has happened with him. So what RBI is saying that this is not kind of complaint. If a fraud has happened with a customer, uh, uh, you know, and he's coming with a complaint, what we can do to basically reduce it? The only way to reduce is to make people aware, and there is kind of obligation they have imposed on banks and financial institutions to make initiatives in their branches, on their website, their digital lending platforms, to make people aware that not to share, their OTPs, not to click on the dubious link. So it's not only prevent the fraud but also reduce the customer grievance complaints to RBI or the financial institution. So there is a lots of push from RBI on the banks and financial institutions to make it a process to reduce fraud and to make our customer aware about it.
right. Absolutely, Rohit. Thanks for your insights. I think the third question is also a similar related to the
Yes.
second point, which is how do you increase awareness, customer awareness in tier 2 and tier 3 cities from an in-app notification perspective. And I think, Praveen, like you said, banks and financial institutions and regulators are doing it, but I think it's time new ways are sought. So whether it is the financial institution that does it or the regulator and TV media, print ads. I think everywhere
Yeah.
there has been an education about all of this, but specifically if it's not going to be SMS going forward, it's going to be in-app notifications. I think that's where the attendees are also coming from. How would you increase awareness if that's going to be an option that's going to change from your traditional SMS? But yeah, point taken, absolutely. Excellent. I think there are no more questions. And Garima,
Yes.
so can we end the
Yes.
session, or
Yes. Sure.
maybe
Sure.
Rohit, Praveen, Ujwal, any last words?
Oh, I think thank you very much for being today, giving us a chance and discussing this important topic. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to
Thank
all the
you for your
panelists.
valuable
Thank
insights.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kartik. Thank you, Rohit. Thank you, Praveen. And thank you, Ujwal, for being a part of this session and your amazing insights. And thank you to the audience as well for keeping it so engaging. We will join back shortly with yet another exciting session. Till then, please stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.